So today I wanted to talk to you guys about something kind of personal, but also something that I know a lot of you guys are probably dealing with. And that is being a writer with ADHD and anxiety. So let's get into it. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Nicole and I write spicy romance under the name Quincy Brook. For those of you who've been here before, welcome back and thanks for joining me. So today I'm talking about something that I have struggled with my whole life, although I did not know it my whole life. And that is being a writer with ADHD and anxiety. So I was never diagnosed with ADHD, which I've discovered is pretty common, especially for women of my age. I'm considered high functioning or high masking ADHD, which basically means that I don't have the hyperactivity that they tend to look for, and I didn't struggle in school, you know, all those years ago when I was in school. Like I didn't have bad grades, I didn't not hand things in. So because I was managing my ADHD, I was never diagnosed because there was never a problem. Like it didn't present a life challenge at that time when I was in school. And anxiety I was diagnosed with in 2021. I think I've always had anxiety. It just never got to a bad enough place that I needed to see a doctor about it until I was in my 30s. This is something that's very personal to me, and I'm sure my story is probably not that uncommon. I'm sure there are a lot of other writers and women out there who probably dealt with ADHD and was never diagnosed, and anxiety and either was never diagnosed or got diagnosed much later in life. But today I wanted to focus on the challenges that ADHD and anxiety present for writers specifically. So anxiety is very common in writers. It's actually statistically more common for a writer to be diagnosed with anxiety than the general public. And the reason for this actually makes complete sense to me. And that is because as writers, especially those of us that are fiction writers, our creativity kind of means that we're in our heads a lot. Like even when I was in school, like elementary school, middle school, all that young, I was known to daydream a lot. I was in my head all the time, and that lends itself well to the writing aspect of things because, you know, we like to think creatively, but it also means that we have a hard time shutting our brains off. And that's where the anxiety and the ADHD kind of come in. Some things that we kind of struggle with, those of us who are writers struggling with this problem, first of all, we need to understand that we're not alone and that millions of writers around the world experience this same struggle and they still succeed. There are countless accounts of successful published authors who have ADHD and anxiety. So it doesn't stop us from finding success. It just means that we need to take a slightly different approach to things. So first, let's talk about what ADHD and anxiety is. So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's a developmental disorder that usually gets diagnosed at school age because that's usually when it starts presenting problems. And the symptoms include inattention, which can include daydreaming or constantly getting off task. Hyperactivity, which is like fidgeting and kids who are very, very chatty, or hyperfocus. Now, I know this is one where you're like, I thought you were just talking about like inattention, which is like lack of focus. So hyperfocus, I'm going to get into a little bit later. Lack of organization, that has to do with, we have a hard time not only organizing our things, so we tend to lose things or misplace things very often. We also have a hard time organizing our time, or time management skills is another struggle. And then impulsiveness is kind of the last one. And that has to do more with, we tend to make very hasty decisions, and we have a hard time waiting for things. Like if we want something right now. And if like we have a hard time waiting for the thing that we want. And then interrupting. So this happens a lot in conversation where we interrupt the people we're talking to all the time. Like we something comes into our head that we like need to say, and we have a hard time waiting our turn to speak. I know I struggle with this personally a lot. I am constantly interrupting people, like especially my husband. I'm doing it all the time, and it's halfway because I'm impulsive, but also it's because I'm afraid I'm going to forget what I'm about to say, which is a whole other thing that has to do with ADHD and anxiety. We forget things. We forget things a lot. Like I said, most of the time, this is usually diagnosed at school age because that's usually when the problems become apparent. But it affects people of all ages. I was never formally diagnosed because it did not present a big enough problem for me in school. It didn't really become an issue for me until I was older, and I had more things to juggle. While anybody can show some of these symptoms at some point or another, differentiating between that and a person who actually has ADHD is when these symptoms are frequent and consistent over a long period of time. So if you've been experiencing these kind of symptoms very often for years, then most likely you have ADHD. Okay, and then anxiety. This was something that I was not diagnosed with until I was older. This has to do with most people associate anxiety with people who have a hard time controlling their worry. Like they worry about things very easily and like to the extreme. Now everybody, like this is a normal, like everybody in life has stress and worries about things sometimes. So you usually don't get diagnosed with anxiety until you start experiencing other things alongside the excessive worrying. So like feeling irritable or on edge where it starts affecting your mood because you can't stop worrying about things. You're feeling restless and you have trouble relaxing because you can't stop worrying about things. You have a hard time concentrating. Again, this all leads back to you have a hard time not worrying about things. You can't shut your brain off, and those worries are interfering and causing other symptoms. You have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, which then causes fatigue. You're experiencing headaches or stomach aches or muscle twitches or tension, like muscle tension. You're trembling or twitching more often. You're sweating a lot. You're feeling lightheaded. You're feeling out of breath a lot. You're having a hard time swallowing. This is one that I experience a lot. I am constantly choking on my own saliva. Or when I get like a drink of water, it's constantly going down the wrong tube. It's really weird. Like it's the weirdest symptom, but it's true. and then making frequent trips to the bathroom. I personally don't experience this, but I think that's just because I probably just don't drink enough water. But those are all symptoms that tie back to what the actual disorder stems from, which is you can't shut your brain off. That's what it is. It's just once it starts developing these other symptoms, that's when you know that it's become a problem. Like your worry has now interfered with other parts of your life, and that's usually when you end up at the doctor and you get diagnosed with anxiety. So anxiety disorder just means that this is a persistent problem, and it's not just in every once in a while, oh, we had like a hard month, or, it was a really hard week at work this week and you're feeling anxious and then it went away because work got better. That's normal. It's when it doesn't go away, again, like ADHD, and it persists for months or years at a time. Okay, so how does this look if you're a writer with ADHD or anxiety? Because it looks a little bit different. Or it looks a little more specific, like it's specific to what we're trying to accomplish as writers. So for a writer who is struggling with this, it might mean that you bounce between projects and ideas all the time. All the time. Because you have a hard time focusing on one thing. And you have a hard time sticking to one task or focusing on one task. That has to do with the inattention thing. Another thing is we deal with the shiny new idea syndrome. So it's not just bouncing between projects or tasks, like bouncing between, writing and then like marketing work, or like this would be like videoing, where it's all part of the writing career, but it's not a single task. You're bouncing between tasks a lot. Shiny new idea syndrome is when you start a project and you're like hyper focused. So I want to talk about that hyper focus that I told you about. So hyper focus is when you get this idea, and it's not just with ideas, it's with pretty much anything. So this happens with me with new ideas for stories, and it happens with research a lot. So I will fall into research rabbit holes, and I will fall into like brainstorming rabbit holes all the time. And what the hyperfocus does is it literally steals time, because you lose track of time as you're in hyperfocus. And that's another problem that we writers with ADHD and anxiety deal with, is we have a very hard time staying consistent, building a routine, and making deadlines because of this loss of time that we are constantly dealing with cycles of hyper focus, and then we lose interest in something and we have to start all over. And then the last thing that you'll notice with writers is a lot of times we need to take more frequent and longer breaks between our writing tasks. So the Pomodoro method is very common. If you've been in the writing community, you've probably heard of it. Pomodoro is where you write for 25 minutes and you take a 5-minute break. That is the classic Pomodoro. However, for writers who have ADHD and anxiety, most of the time, Pomodoro probably wouldn't work. And the reason I'm saying that is because for those of us who have it severe enough, a 5-minute break is not enough. Like I can barely go to the bathroom in 5 minutes. So, and it's not long enough to actually give me a break and for me to step away and come back. I'm going to offer a couple of things that I've noticed for me personally and things that I've tried that help, that I think would be a good idea for you to at least attempt to try. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some solutions and strategies for writers who are dealing with ADHD and anxiety. So we're going to break this into two different things, which is time and we'll call it accountability. So time and accountability. So for time, you should still be using writing sprints. Just because the Pomodoro writing sprint might not work, like it doesn't work for me, doesn't mean you don't need some kind of timer to help you keep track of time. The timer helps a lot when you're dealing with hyperfocus, because if something happens and you fall into that rabbit hole, research rabbit hole or brainstorming rabbit hole or whatever, and you get off track, the timer is going to go off and remind you that you need to get back to what the original task was. So the timer is there to not only help you stay on task, but also to kind of remind you if you do get off task. So it pulls you back into the original task. Now, what I would suggest for writing sprints personally is try and start with shorter periods of writing and a longer break in between. So instead of doing a 25-minute or 30-minute or 45-minute writing sprint and only giving yourself 5 minutes break in between those writing sprints, that puts a lot on you if you're dealing with this problem. So try a shorter writing sprint, like a 10 or 15-minute writing sprint, but then give yourself a longer break. So instead of only breaking for 5 minutes, break for 30 or break for an hour and go do something else. And when you are taking your breaks, so when your timer goes off and you're taking those longer breaks, make sure you're using those breaks effectively. So you're using them to recharge. You're not using your breaks to go do something else that's productive, because that's not a break. That's you switching tasks, which is one of the symptoms. So when your timer goes off and it's time for me to take a break, you need to take a break, like an actual break. You need to go take a walk or go read something or watch a television show or something that refills your creative well, not something that requires more brain work, not something that requires more energy from you, because then you won't have it to go to give to your writing task when it's time to write again. Now, I'm not saying like never get your other stuff done. I'm saying that cannot be considered a break. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying that has to be considered another productive sprint. So you could do writing sprints and you can do productivity sprints. So like if you have more than just writing to complete today, that's fine. But then it means that whatever it is your other tasks are, whether that's like for me, it would be like, I need to make dinner, I need to do laundry, I need to mow the grass, whatever it is, you do not do those things during a break. You do those things when it's considered productive time. Now, like for me, mowing the grass is going to take more than, 10, 15 minutes. But it's still not considered a break for me. That is considered a productive time sprint, you could call it. It doesn't have to be a sprint, but you don't consider that a break. That's all I'm saying. Don't consider when you're completing things that require productivity from you, that is not a break. That's all I'm saying. Don't force writing every day. Again, we have us writers with ADHD particularly go through these moments of hyperfocus. So instead of fighting against it, you need to try and utilize it. So when you get your shiny new idea, use it. You need to try, use those moments of hyper focus to get as much done productively as you can while it's there, because it will inevitably fade, and then you will have to turn to other strategies to continue being productive. So don't fight against the hyperfocus. Instead, try and utilize those moments of hyperfocus to try and get you closer to your goals. Switch tasks often. So that basically means when you're trying to focus on one specific task like drafting, it's okay to switch sometimes. So you can go from drafting to doing something that requires a different part of your brain, because creative writing takes a lot of it, a lot of your creative energy. So try and switch to a task that requires less creative energy from you, but something that you still enjoy doing. Okay, and then instead of trying to force daily writing goals, try and stretch it to a week. Because then it still gives you a goal to reach towards. Make sure it's a realistic goal. So like if you've never, like for me, if you've never written more than, 1,000 words in a week, don't try and suddenly write 10,000 words a week. Don't try and suddenly, if you've never finished a book in 30 days, like even close to a book, like if the most you've ever written in a month is like 10,000 words, don't try and write a 50,000 word book in a month as your goal. Like you need to make small incremental goals. Okay, and then last, I want to say this because it's probably one of the most important things, and that is you need to be kind to yourself. You are probably the person putting the most pressure on you, and you need to stop. You need to understand that this is a journey and it's not a sprint. You're not going to suddenly find all the answers overnight. You are not going to find the perfect strategy that works for you tomorrow. And that has to be okay. You have to be okay with going through the process, because it's a process. Just like writing is a process. I want you to think of this the same way you think of the writing process. So writing, you don't go from idea to finished novel ready to publish in a day. Like it doesn't happen. I don't care what writer you are not, you cannot do that. It is a journey. It is a process. You need to think of the idea. You need to brainstorm. You need to organize your ideas. You need to put those ideas actually onto the page. You need to revise those ideas and words that you put on the page. You need to get other people's opinion. There's a whole process that goes into writing. And the same thing happens when you're dealing with ADHD and anxiety. You need to experiment with different strategies and find the ones that work for you. So to start, just pick one. Pick one of the strategies I gave you. It doesn't matter which one. Are you going to try adjusting writing sprints? If you're a person who already uses writing sprints a lot and you've already found success with whatever you're using with timing sprints, then don't pick that one, because you already found that works for you. And you might need to try something else if the writing sprints hasn't been enough. Or you might want to try just adjusting your writing sprints. If you think that, well, the writing sprints are, like, I like them, but they're not working as well as I thought they would. Maybe it's because you need to adjust the timing. Maybe you need to adjust writing shorter, breaking longer. Or maybe you need to implement more external accountability into your life. Maybe that's something that, pick one. Are you going to try writing in a cafe and use that as your external accountability? Are you going to find a writing buddy? Are you going to join a writing group? Are you going to start journaling? There are a lot of different ways that you can manage this problem. And to start, all you need is one. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. Just try another one. So remember that each step forward, whether a strategy works for you or doesn't, it's still a step forward, because it just means that you found what didn't work for you, which is one step closer to finding the thing that does work for you. And that is going to build your confidence and increase your momentum as things go forward. You have to look at it as you are always moving forward, even if at times it feels like you're taking 3 steps back. You're not. You are moving forward. It just means that you're moving forward with finding the things that aren't working. And that's still progress. So I hope this helped. I hope you guys got some good ideas from this. I hope you guys understand that if you are dealing with some of these issues, if some of like when I went through what the ADHD and anxiety is and how it manifests in writers particularly, and you were like, oh my God, that is so me, know that you are not alone. I am with you. I know the struggle. And I'm here to tell you that it's okay. You will find the way forward. So I hope you guys have a great day. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, please just comment the word journey. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps little channels like mine. I mean, it only takes a couple of seconds. So I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.